Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It's me, Candace. I am here for our Thursday evening author spotlights. So today I'm really excited to bring you Marita Woywod Crandle. And she is a really super cool person. If you don't know who she is, she's one of my favorite people. And she has always had a fancy for the magical side of life, and lives here in New Orleans in the French Quarter. Marita has enjoyed a successful career in marketing while she lived in California. She was an ad designer and a staff writer for the Beverly Hills Courier newspaper. She was director of marketing for a real estate company and for Coldwell Banker, another real estate company, and did a whole bunch of marketing stuff for a lot of different people. And then once she stepped foot into the French Quarter, her life changed and she was drawn immediately to New Orleans, and she has become ingrained in the city. She lives here with her husband, and together they run Boutique du Vampire. And if you have not been there, it is amazing and you should go. It's a really cool vampire store in the French Quarter. They also run a private vampire speakeasy, Potions, which if you've ever been to our Harry Potter party in the past couple of years, that's where we've had it. Marita has a passion for animals as well. And she and her husband both live in the French Quarter with their dogs. And I'm really excited to talk to Marita today about Josie Arlington's Storyville. So welcome, Marita.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. So can you tell us, for folks who may not know, who Josie Arlington is and what your book is about?
So Josie Arlington was probably the most infamous, or one of them for sure, French Quarter madams during Storyville time. And she had the Arlington brothel. And then she became just kind of a French Quarter character as well. She was a pioneer of her time because she started really a very smart marketing ploy as far as prostitution, and was able to pave her own way, and then eventually lived a very lavish life. And so I was actually, can I talk about why I know her? Okay. So I'm working on, finished actually my vampire novel, but at the time I was looking for a madam to be a love interest for my main character, who is a vampire. And I was looking at all the different madams, and Josie came up, and I thought, wow, she sounds cool. So I started investigating more about her, and I thought, wow, she's perfect for this story. And so, I chose her, and it's worked out amazingly for lots of different reasons. I don't know how much you want me to go on, so I'll stop there.
Oh, I could listen to you talk about her like all night. So like you should, as much as you want to say is good.
Okay, well, what was really cool is there's a lot of coincidences that have happened with my novel and with this book. And we talk about the magical side of life. I really do believe in the magical side of life. And I think it's been stripped away from us. And if you even talk about like coincidences and crazy things, well, if you believe in it, more and more comes towards you. And it's just fascinating. And that's kind of how I've lived my life now. But anyway, I was at a restaurant, and I've known this lady for about 18 years. She has been our bartender at different places, a couple of different places. And she was working at Vincent's. And I said to her, out of the blue, when I found Josie, and that's probably why I said my next book is going to be about Josie Arlington, because it wasn't. It was really about Wayne and John Carter. But I said, oh, my next book is about Josie Arlington. And she looked at me and said, why? And I said, well, because it's, she's going to be my love interest for my novel. And it turns out that she's a relative of Josie's. I couldn't believe it. I was just floored. And so she said I could take pictures of anything that she has. They have a lot of things from the brothel. And I thought, well, I don't need that for my novel. So the more I started researching her, I did a tremendous amount of research, and it snowballed into just one thing after the other, crazy, crazy stories. And you'll find a lot of those in the book. Anyway, then I started thinking, let me call my publisher and see, the historical publisher, History Press, and see if they would like to have a book about Josie. And sure enough, they said yes. And so then I, published it, which made sense to put all my notes and findings into print, because there was nothing as comprehensive about her. So.
Yeah, and that's really cool that it kind of started off as you found her as was going to use her for a fictional character, and then just happened to meet somebody who was like a relative, and then like got into all this research. I think that's so cool. It was like meant to be.
Yeah, it really is. And it was really neat is that I've been able to introduce family members that didn't know each other at all. And now their grandkids are playing together. And that really has meant a lot to me. And they're really cool people, really colorful. I mean, it's no surprise that these people are her relatives, because Josie was a very colorful character. And every person I've met that is an ancestor of hers has a really amazing personality. So I'm looking forward to working with them more. We have a lot of fun projects coming up. And one of them, so in doing my research, I found that in 1911, Josie had a tomb built for herself that she really wanted to spend her, afterlife in. And it's very unusual. It's rose marble and granite, and it has a statue in the front of a woman knocking on the door holding roses. And there's two things that it's thought to symbolize. One is that she was turned away from her parents at a young age, which led to her life of prostitution. So it could be her, knocking at the door and being turned away, but also she never deflowered a virgin. And so they believe that possibly it's, that situation, virgins being turned away. Right now, unfortunately, to me, it looks like Josie knocking to be let back into her tomb, because she built the tomb in 1911, spent quite a lot of money on it and quite a lot of time. I found all the original documents at Tulane University, and it was like a gold mine, all the things I found. But it made me very emotional about the project, because I found every single architectural drawing from every angle, all the signatures she, wrote for the payments and what she wanted. And so I was sitting there one day and I started crying, and I thought, you know what? I called her ancestor, Darlene, and I said, we got to put her back in her tomb. And she was just thrilled. And so all the ancestors are, and we've decided that that's what we have to do one way or another. And so she died in 1914. Her niece, who she took care of her entire life, I'm gonna lose my voice. Her niece that she took care of her entire life, sent her to schools in Paris, gave her everything. She even bought a house on Esplanade Avenue, and a mansion, so that Anna, her niece, would never know about Josie's life of prostitution. Well, I'm going to make this a very short story. You can read about it in the book. But a year and a day exactly after Josie was put in her tomb, when it's legal to remove a body, her niece and her husband, which was Josie's lover, she and Brady were together. And a week after Josie died, Brady married Anna Dubler, Josie's niece. It's a creepy story. But anyway, a year and a day after Josie passed away, they took her body out of the tomb. They squeezed the last bit of money out of her, even though Anna actually got the lion's share of Josie's estate. They just wanted the rest of her money. And they put her in another tomb that Josie had, but it's an unmarked one. And it's just really, really sad. So we're working now, and it looks like there's going to be a really amazing documentary on the project. So I've been holding off until the virus is going to allow us to participate in this. It's like a 3-hour documentary about my and the family's struggles about putting Josie back in her tomb. But I am super thrilled that they're on board, and I'm just looking forward to actually making it happen.
Yeah, that is so cool that you're doing that too. And I'm sure that the family like really appreciates it. Also, so they took her out of the tomb and sold it? Is that what they did to try and get more money? Oh.
Yeah, they sold it. So it now belongs to the Morales family. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like there are any Moraleses left. The children of the Morales who bought the tomb didn't have any children, and the last one was put into the tomb in 2011. So now it looks like it might be up to the cemetery. So we have a lot of work to do, and if we have to, we're gonna have to build another tomb. If we can share the tomb with the Morales family, that would be the ultimate scenario, and put her back in her actual tomb. And there is room, and there's a whole left side where we can, put her name and everything. And that would be obviously our ultimate goal. And she deserves to be in that tomb. I mean, she built it and she wanted to be there. It really is, what's that called? I can't say it. Oh my goodness. The ground is sanctuary.
Oh, consecrated. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Consecrated ground. And I think, they need to acknowledge that and put her back. But if they don't, then we will have to raise money and build the tomb. And so all my proceeds from my book are going to go, from the Josie book, are going to go to that project. And then hopefully it won't be that much and we can put her back in that tomb. But if we have to build a tomb, we'll have some fundraisers and, other things. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, help Josie go back into her tomb by buying this book. So tell us about your research project. I know you did a lot of research for this book. So what was your process? Like, how did you get started? Did you just start reading books? Like, what did you do to learn all of this stuff about Josie?
I did everything. I love research, though. I really do. Even my vampire book, I did, a tremendous amount of research. And once you get started, that's the fun part, is getting through the topical research and then finding, the little wormholes and getting down to the nitty gritty. A lot of that I find in footnotes of books. I pretty much read every book there is about, and for Josie, for sure. I don't think there's one book that even mentions her that I haven't read. But so I do that, and then I read footnotes where they got their information, because obviously you can't take someone else's word for it. And then I try to really find, get to the source. And in that case, many times it's old newspaper articles, which is a very good source, even though sometimes, like our news today, it was still very skewed. And the news back in the day was very colorful, the way things were written. I mean, some of them, it's beautiful writing, and not, they don't squeeze or change the facts, but the way they present them are really colorful. And so that's fun to read. But that, and then I went to the university, Tulane, UNO, and they had pictures that were donated from family members. And then, I was so fortunate to have met a family member, and then all the family members now, that are really involved. And one of them, Mary Alice, she has done so much genealogy, and I found her, she found me after the book was published, and WWL did an amazing news spot on the project. And she saw that and then contacted me. And so she is a real big coup, really, because she was Anna's great-granddaughter. And so she really has a lot of information. And like I said, she was a genealogist, so she knows a lot. She's done a ton of research. And so we're really waiting to do any more research, or I'm waiting to do any more interviews or anything until we get the documentary. Because again, if we have to build a tomb, that documentary can really help financially to bring attention to the project. So, I hate when things are about money, but sometimes it's necessary. So that's kind of why I'm on hold. But yeah, I went to the New Orleans Historic Collection, which is just, again, a gold mine. We're so lucky here in New Orleans that so much information is at our fingertips. And I spent a lot of time there looking through a lot of slides and microfiche. And same with our library here, the main library, spent a lot of time there. I found this was the best information that I found, was the succession of the will, and also the court case when Josie's brother was murdered by her lover. And I found the actual court cases. And so then you actually get to hear Josie's words out of her mouth. And that's really powerful, information. And so rather than reading a newspaper article, which I had so much from that, but then it really, they did skew things a little bit. And I said, oh no, she didn't say that at all. She said, she says that, but she also said this, and that completely changed the meaning of what she said. So kind of like they do, like I said today, they show a little snippet of information and then take away what they don't want you to see. So that was very, very powerful. And I highly recommend that if you're doing research, try to find the court cases and, transcripts. That's very, very good information.
Yeah, that must have been super cool to see her actual, her talking, and to imagine her saying it. That seems really, really neat.
It was. That was my favorite part. Yeah.
Do you have, she has such an interesting life, Josie Arlington. Do you have a favorite story that you learned about her?
I do. There's many, but one of my favorites is, when you were a prostitute back in the time, especially Josie and like Lulu White, they had these amazing palaces. And so a lot of lawyers and politicians would go there really to talk and socialize and do business in addition to, the other. And so there was just a lot of business going on, a lot of things, because it was so beautiful. It was a great place to meet. And then Tom Anderson, who was kind of the unofficial mayor of Storyville, put on this like a Mardi Gras ball that was, kind of a play on Mardi Gras. So the queen was a prostitute, and everything was a little tongue in cheek, but beautiful, beautiful invitations. And they spent a lot of money. And it was very lucrative for them. It was very expensive to go. Well, the wives of some of these politicians found out about it. And of course, they couldn't go to brothels. They couldn't go to bars. That's something only prostitutes could do. And so they were really kind of special in that way. So some of these very affluent women found out about this ball, and they wanted to go. So they got their husbands. It's masquerade ball, Mardi Gras, but real masquerade. And so they got their husbands to buy them tickets. Well, word got to Josie, and so she called the police and told them, there's going to be all these prostitutes there that don't have licenses, and I really think you need to raid that party. And so sure enough, they did, and all the wives got arrested for prostitution.
Oh, wow.
And not having a license. And so that was just so great, because they were trying to mock, Josie, and she turned it on them. And I thought that was really clever. I have one other really, really great one.
Yeah.
So, at one point, the police were doing really bad things. They were taking money from prostitutes, even though they were making so little money. They would say it was for protection, and yet they didn't ever do anything for these girls. And so it finally came out, and there was a huge court case. It was, it was a big deal in the city. And so those are really great news articles to read, because the way they describe it, it was like kind of like the French opera, all these chariots pulled up, and women of all kinds, like some like Josie and flamboyant, beautiful outfits, and other like prostitutes that were less well off were in rags, and you had everything, a big gambit. And then you had all the people there as spectators, mostly men. And the courthouse was just kind of a zoo, really. Anyway, Josie and Lulu White and a couple other the more prominent madams were in the front row, and they got thirsty. It was taking so long, so they sent one of their coachmen to go get a bottle of champagne. And sure enough, they were drinking champagne, and they offered it to some of the men around them, but nobody said yes. Nobody knew they were doing it except for the people right around them. But I mean, how great. They were treating it like it was a show, an opera. They were finally getting like their just rewards. So like I said, she was colorful.
That is awesome. And like I said, like her life is just super, super interesting. And there's so many good stories about Josie. And so going back a little bit, I want to know more about like your personal process too as a writer, because you write both fiction and nonfiction. So I'm wondering if your process is like, how does your process differ between the two? Like, how does your brain switch? Do you write them both at the same time? Do you like spend time doing one or the other? Like, I know because you kind of do both, and I'm just interested in how your brain switches.
Okay. So I wrote the outline for the Carter Brothers novel, which is historical fiction, one evening on my French Quarter balcony. I wrote the entire thing in 4 hours, and it's cheap a bit, but I do I've written film before, and that's how I write my novel as well, and my books in general is kind of like a script. So, plot points, and I lay it out, act 1, act 2, act 3 kind of. And so I did all that evening, and then that's when I wanted to find a prostitute, because it was going to go back into the past, and then I started doing research. So right now I'm working on a werewolf book called The Mystic of Scaries, and same thing. I did the outline first, and then I want to include real information of gypsies. That takes place in Ireland. So Irish gypsies and Romanian gypsies that have migrated to Ireland. And there's so much great information. So truth is really, crazier than fiction in most aspects. And it's so interesting when you're reading a novel that is historical fiction, when you think, wow, this is really interesting. And you go and look it up later on and you find out it's true. I really like that. Like when I was reading The Historian, I learned a lot about the Ottoman Empire. And so there's a lot of really great historical fiction novels that I think it's fun to learn while you read and take something away that's not just fantasy. So yeah, then I started doing the research, and I really try to find things like, well, I'm working on something else that is kind of a secret. And so I'm not going to talk about that, but it's a fantastical story that took place in New Orleans. And I almost can't believe it myself. It's more of a crime story. And, you know, it's okay to build fiction around that. That's what makes it fun. So I try to stick to the story as much as possible, the truth, but then adding that other layer is so much fun for me. So yeah, I kind of do it simultaneously, I would say, but I did stop my novel. Like I wrote 2 books in preparation for my novel. So I did the outline. I started writing the first third, and then I wrote the vampire book. I completely stopped working on my novel, wrote the entire vampire book, did all the history. Then I started working on the novel again, and then I wrote the entire Josie book, and then I finished my novel. So I guess I do it all at the same time, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit. So you do have another book called New Orleans Vampires. So tell us a little bit about that book too. Give the audience a little bit of a taste of what that one's about and the kind of research that you did, because these are like stories. So I'm also curious as to like who you talked to and how you did the research for the vampire book as well.
So yeah, there's 3 main legends: the Carter brothers, the Casket Girls, and Saint Germain. And History Press actually approached me right when I was working on my novel and doing research, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in submitting a proposal for a vampire book based on where the legends originated. And I thought that was a really cool angle and fascinating. It would really be challenging to write because I didn't want to ruin the legends. I love them all. And I would hate to be the person that is like, well, and this didn't happen and this didn't happen. And, that would just be ugly, really. So I focused on all the, history of where it came from, like the Casket Girls and the Ursuline nuns and the Grey sisters and, all the truths and all the ways that these people put it together. And there was so much more truth to the fiction. And that was really fun for me. That was probably, well, no, they were all fun. Every legend had its own fun parts, but finding out, the ship Boleyn and the first, my goal was to find out the first time they were ever called the Casket Girls, because it comes obviously from their trousseaux and, and when I found it, that was magical for me. The first time those words actually came out of someone's mouth that they were the Casket Girls. And that was a really long time ago. And it's not just because, it's actually not at all because their trousseaux were shaped like caskets. And it's not even that it's casket. It's that caskets only were referred to as caskets in America. A casket was a box. And so, they were the Casket Girls because their trousseaux were boxes. And so they, and really it came from another group of girls that were treated very nicely. The Casket Girls were the second attempt, and well, they weren't even the second, they were way after attempts, but there was another group of girls that was brought to America to help populate the city with a better class of people. And actually they were brought to Canada, sorry, the first group. And they were treated very, very well. And then our group were, treated semi-well, better than the other women that were prisoners and prostitutes that were drug here, screaming and kicking. But hearing, I'm fascinated with New Orleans anyway, and the history of New Orleans and history in general. And I have a really weird story for you. My very first time I stepped into New Orleans, I know a lot of people have this story, but mine was like really like a magnet. Like I got so sad every time I left, and I couldn't believe it existed. And my very first day here, a friend of mine told me, you have to go to the bottom of the cup tea room and have your fortune told. Well, my company put me up at the Sheraton, and I did not want to stay at the Sheraton. And so on my way to the convention center, I went into the quarter and I found the bottom of the cup, and I thought, oh, I want to go there tonight, maybe have my fortune told. So I walked in and I asked the guy who worked there if he knew of a bed and breakfast I could stay in instead of the Sheraton. He says, you know what? We have a great fortune teller here right now. Why don't you have your fortune told? And by the time you come out, I will have a place for you to stay. So I thought, okay, well, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, but okay. Anyway, so it was recorded. And honestly, I remembered it as being a man. And it wasn't. It ended up being a woman. I found the tape about 4 years ago. So anyway, I had my fortune told, and he sure enough had a place for me to go. And I have a great ghost story about that, but that's a whole nother Oprah. Anyway, so years later, I find the tape, and I lay down on my bed. And we just bought this house. I hadn't written the vampire book yet, and I'm listening to it. And at the end of the talk with her, she said, "Do I have any questions?" And I said, "Yeah, I've always been a writer. Like I had magazine columns, and I had a newspaper column, but I'd never written a book." And I said, "I really want to write. Do you see anything progressing with that?" And she said, "Yeah, but I see a lot of history books." And I'm like, well, I actually remember listening to that 4 years ago, and I thought, oh, it's such bullshit, And I took it, I threw it away. And I wish I had it now, because my first 3 books are history books. I think that's so weird, It's really, really weird. But anyway, what was I saying? I don't know. Oh, Carter Brothers. So finding those, little real historical parts, and then finding out where these legends originated or how they might have. A lot of that you have to kind of build on, like, because there were very many different versions of the story. And my goal was to kind of streamline it so that tour guides would have a really great way to present this story in a very factual way. And so if people do research it, they're going to find out, yeah, this is true. So that's really what I did. And I didn't ruin the legends. I really, I let them live out. I just said kind of where they came from. And if this happened, then, it's possible that the Carter brothers are still seen in the French Quarter now and then. It's possible. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. I think anything is possible. And so you wrote a novel too about the Carter brothers. Were you inspired by the research that you did for the vampire novel, or were you already writing that?
I was already writing it. Yeah, okay. I already did the outline. I was about a third through, and then that's when History Press approached me, which was magical. It really was, because, I don't know that I would have finished a novel ever or finished a book ever if I hadn't been working with History Press. They are an amazing publisher to work with, excellent editors, the process of actually completing it. And that's what's interesting about fiction versus historical books. Everybody kept telling me, oh my God, the editing process is a nightmare. Just wait, until you go through the editing process. Well, I found it to be awesome. I was just so impressed with how the edits were done. I mean, we're so lucky now with computerization and having to be able to communicate with your editor, with little notes on the side and being able to accept them or not accept them. But I found that amazing. Anyway, they were so smart and streamlined. Even when I started writing with them, they sent me a little pamphlet of what the writing process is going to be like, what to expect, and, to follow, what guidelines to follow, and everything. It was just really, really well done. And it taught me how to write a book. And so I'm so grateful to them for doing that. But like I said, it was magical, because for them to contact me right when I needed them, it's insane. And then for me to find Darlene, the ancestor of Josie, right when I was working on my novel and I needed more, the book wouldn't have been what it is, my novel, if I hadn't done all the research on Josie. And I wouldn't have done all the research on Josie if I hadn't met her family member and been inspired, by diving into it more. So it's been really a magical process.
Yeah, I mean, it's all super sounds like it was meant to be, and serendipity, and all of magical, really all of this stuff.
Can I tell you one more crazy magical thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So this is about the novel, and I still can't believe this myself, because like I said, every time something seemed like an obstacle or I got stuck, it was like a door magically opened. Well, my assistant, my writing assistant, Anne Guthrie, she posts on my Facebook page sometimes, and she had posted this beautiful thing that I didn't know about called 4-edge painting. And it's when you have a book with gilded edges, golden pages, and you fan out the book, like from the top, there, all of a sudden the pages then have a beautiful, or can have a beautiful illustration or mural really on it. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. And I became obsessed with it. I have to have that. And I wanted my first 100 books of the Carter brothers to come out that way. Well, it turns out you can't reproduce it like that. It's a one-time, it's watercolor. And I mean, they are gorgeous. If you check out 4-edge paintings, you'll be amazed. We have 2 of them here at the New Orleans Historic Collection, by the way. Anyway, and I got to hold them, and it was really cool. So I thought, okay, well, if I can't have my first 100 books have that, then I want to have the first 1,000 be gold edge, gilded pages. And one of them is going to have this mural. It's like a $2,000 painting. And I could not find, there's only one 4-edge painter in the world right now. One.
Oh, wow.
And his name is Martin Frost. And so I was trying to find him, and all of his emails bounced back to me. And so then I almost thought maybe he was deceased, because there was no way to get a hold of him. He had a Facebook, but no communication. I tried everything. And I tried for about a month. And then I sat in my office and I said, you know what? Think, how can you find this man? There's got to be a way. And so I have one friend in England, and I called her, Kath, and I told her what I just told you. And she said, wait a minute, Martin Frost? Oh my God, he used to live across the street from me. His wife worked for my father. Hang on. And he contacted me, and sure enough, he's doing the mural for the novel. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So we're going to do a big thing, and I'm trying to get him here to actually pull the winner when we do the book release, and then have him stay and do a class, like for the New Orleans Historic Collection or something, on how to do 4-edge paintings. It's quite intricate. I actually have a book I'm working on right now myself, because I am a painter. And it's a very, very difficult process. It's what's it called? It's hard to do. Intimidating. It's intimidating because you don't want to mess it up. It's one book you're working on, and
right.
Yeah, but he's amazing.
Yeah, and that's like super cool too. Like, again, meant to be. Like, you're trying to find this guy, and then your friend is just like, oh yeah, I know him.
I mean, it's one person I know. How's that?
Yeah. Right?
Crazy.
That's nuts. Well, I do also want to open it up to questions. So if anyone out there watching has any questions as well, definitely post them, and I'm sure Marita will be happy to answer them if y'all have any. In the meantime, Marita, do you have any like book recommendations for our audience?
Yes. I mean, if you like vampire legends, I would definitely recommend The Casket Girls by Elise Arden. And I know that you carry that book, and I think they're signed as well. And the series is wonderful. If you like, I'm going to go vampires first. There is one of my favorite vampire books. It's about, this is actually how I found out that I have ties to Vlad Tepes, which is crazy because I had no idea. And I'm the only girl in the country in the world there was one other one in the world at the time that opened up a vampire store. And I mean, I had to have no idea. I found out 2 years after I opened the shop, and I happened to have fangs of my own. They're real. I was born with them. Anyway, so the book, The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. Wonderful book. I mean, really awesome. You learn a lot. Like I said, it's historical fiction, but it's a father and daughter in search of Dracula. And my dad sent me the book, and it's just a magical book for me, but it's beautifully written. It's like reading a painting, really lovely. And then right now, Dacre Stoker, who wrote the foreword for my vampire book, is Bram Stoker's great grandnephew. And he wrote a book called Dracul that is really nice as well. It's creepy. It's historical. It's based on Bram Stoker's kind of writing the book and notes that Dacre has from the book that were never published. But it's also a fictional story about Bram's connection to vampires. So that's quite nice. And then as far as Josie, I mean, there's so many books and unfortunately, a lot of them, didn't do a lot of research. Like, they just took little parts, and I found a lot of mistakes in them. But I mean, there's quite a few books on Storyville. There's The Last Madam is fun to read. I mean, you really can't go wrong. The Last Madam is fun. Chris Rose wrote Storyville. That was pretty good. That actually has a lot of really, true information about the Blue Book and everything. And then let's see. I'm working on werewolves right now, and I would like some recommendations if anybody out there has any, because I watched a bunch of werewolf movies, and some are great, some are really great, but I would love to read a really good werewolf novel, and I haven't found one. So if anybody knows any, I would love to know.
Cool. Yeah, I really like werewolves as well. I think I probably like werewolves better than vampires. I don't know. Werewolves have always fascinated me for some reason. I don't know why, but they always have. So Yeah, I would also, if anybody has any really good werewolf books. I don't think I've ever read one that's like specifically I mean, there's a lot of books with werewolves in them. But I don't think I've ever read a book that's like has a werewolf as a main character. So yeah, I would definitely like that because I really werewolves and zombies are totally my thing. I don't know why. I love vampires, but I do think I like werewolves better. I don't know. I think it's just because they're, I don't know, warm or something. I don't know.
And wait, werewolves don't live longer, do they? They just live out their life.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they're just like shapeshifters. So I don't think that they live. They're not immortal, at least not usually. I mean, I guess you could make them immortal if you wanted to, but I don't think any that that I know about are immortal. No, Anne Rice wrote a werewolf book, I think, The Wolf Gift, but
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that book.
You know, that's one I might want to read. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I have one, if we have time, I have one real vampire story.
Oh yes, please do.
It's at the end of my book, but it's so crazy. And I mean, this really happened. And, you know, I honestly don't believe in vampires. I love vampires so much, but you know, if I were to be asked, do you believe they're real? Of course, I would say no. However, I had just opened up my vampire shop and it was on Orleans and it was a really, really crazy situation. We had I couldn't find a place. And so I just finally gave in. It was quite expensive too. But we had a very long carriageway. And at the end of the carriageway was a big mirror and you couldn't go any further. It was impossible to go any further. And then you had to make a right and walk 2 steps up. And so I was in the what we call the candle studio, which was the kitchen, making candles. And we make our own candles always at the shop. And I had my German Shepherd working with me, and she was a lovely dog. She was intimidating looking, but she was really a sweetheart. And so she would sit up anytime somebody walked into the shop to alert me that there was someone there. So I was just pouring wax, and I hear somebody enter the shop with a cane. And I could tell it was a cane because, you know, you can hear them, their foots in this. And she stood up and started growling. And I thought, that's weird. So I yelled out, I'm like, hey, I'll be right there. You know, I'm just pouring wax. And I really tried to hurry. And the whole time she's like, you know. So I come around the corner and there's this man standing there, a very attractive man in about his mid-40s that, I mean, if you really picture what you think a vampire might look like, and not like a tour guide vampire. I mean, like a real person that is possibly a vampire. He was dressed very well. He was like tailored clothes. His cane was very elaborate, but he wasn't like, it was real. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a cane. It was like a real cane. And it was really strange because he didn't hardly say anything. And I always go into my spiel. I welcome people and tell them that everything we have is made locally. And then all of a sudden he turned around and he says, do you have the history of the vampire? And it was a Romanian accent. I was like telling myself, maybe he's Greek or maybe he's, you know, Italian. No, it was Romanian. And I kept trying to make it something else. Anyway, and I said, no. And he made me really nervous. And I think it was because my dog was growling still and I could feel it under my hand, you know? And so it was the weirdest situation. She never growled at anybody ever. And so, so he's walking around the shop and ignoring me again. And all of a sudden he says, I know people who would be very interested in this. And I thought, oh, cool. You know, and I go, yeah, we have, you know, and again, he ignored me. And it was like, I wasn't even there. And then it was like the shop was a compliment to him. And that's what really stuck with me is like, why is he like, I wasn't thinking that at the time as a reflection. I thought about that. So anyway, he wasn't in there very long and he finally didn't say goodbye or anything. He just walked out, you know, this way and then turned this way. Well, the carriageway was quite long and my husband walks with purpose and he's 6'6". And we had all these windows on the left side. So on my peripheral vision, when I sat down, I had my hand on my dog and I sat down and I said, that was weird. And all of a sudden I see my husband, right? I'm like, oh, cool. Because they were going to meet each other. It was perfect timing, right? So I could tell him. So he comes in and I go, man, that was the weirdest thing. This guy, you know, he goes, what guy? I go, the man who just walked out of here with a cane. He goes, nobody just walked out of here. I go, Steve, the guy who just walked out of here with a cane. He goes, no. And so I ran out the door and our shop was pretty much in the middle of the block, a little bit skewed towards Bourbon. Anyway, nobody. around, and there's nowhere else to go. And it was the middle of the day. It was like, I don't know, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Crazy. And I mean, it freaks me out. And I'll tell you why it freaks me out. When I'm working in the shop alone at night, the hair on my neck stands up sometimes, and it's like I know he's going to walk in. I know I will see that man again one day, and it's a really weird feeling. So that's my honest to God real vampire story.
Yeah, that is super weird, and he sure seems like a vampire. He just disappeared. I kind of like hope. I mean, not to scare you, but I hope he comes back, because like it's like, you know, I don't know. Maybe he would give some kind of clue.
Yeah, I might keep him.
Well, I'm going to do some plugs. It didn't look like, I mean, there are people watching, but nobody has posted a question, but I'm going to do some plugs. If somebody does have a question, we will answer one before the end. But number one, you can buy the Josie Arlington book. This is it. Josie Arlington's Storyville, The Life and Times of a New Orleans Madam, listen to me. New Orleans Madam. And this is the Josie Arlington book. And we do have it at the bookstore. And if you don't live here, I'm sure you could get it. Even if your bookstore doesn't have it, they can definitely order it. So that's Josie Arlington Storyville. You can get it if you go to tubbyandcoos.com and place an order. You can reserve a copy, and we can get you one. It is really good. As you've heard, a lot of interesting stories today. And there are so many more in that book. So definitely check that book out. The other one is called New Orleans Vampires. I don't have a picture of the cover of that, but that book is really, really cool too. I have read that one, and there are some really, really cool stories in there. So New Orleans Vampires, Josie Arlington Storyville. Marita has other books as well. Johnny White is your third history book, right, about Johnny White's bar. So all three of those are available at the store. So you can definitely place an order and get it there. As far as Marita, you can find her online. Her author website is just her name.com. And then Marita, of course, owns the Vampire Shop, which we've been talking about. And it's feelthebite.com, which is a really cool web domain name for Feel the Bite. And the Vampire Shop is really cool. If you like vampires, you should 100% check it out, because the Vampire Shop has some super, super, super cool stuff, and they are selling stuff online right now too. So definitely check that out. Marita, do you have anything else besides your website and the Vampire Shop that you want to tell people about?
No, just watch my website, my other website, and you will know about the Carter Brothers, hopefully coming out soon. I mean, it'll be several months, but we will have that giveaway for that 4-H painting, and it's going to be a really big deal. I'm very excited about it. So, yeah, stay in touch.
Yes, that is going to be awesome. So thank y'all for watching and being here. And I can listen to Marita talk all day. So I love your stories, and I could just listen to you for hours. So thank you for spending time with us and talking about Josie and vampires and all the cool stuff. Magic.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Yes. And thanks everyone again for watching. And of course, one more time, you can get any of Marita's books at tubbyandcoos.com, place an order, and just stick in the name of whichever one of the books that you want, or just say Marita Crandle. I'll know which books that are hers. So you could do that either way. And again, thank you, Marita. Thank you everyone for watching. And just to let you know really quickly, my Aunt Linda, who professor.
Sorry, my werewolf.
No problem. She's Professor Trelawney at our Harry Potter parties. So she said she wanted to say hi.
Professor Trelawney. Hi, Professor.
I said that's my aunt who dresses up like Trelawney for the Harry Potter party.
Oh, I love you so much. That was my favorite time ever. That was so
fun. So she wanted to tell you hi. So I just wanted to let you know she was there. So yes, that's everything we have. Thank you, Marita. Thanks everybody. And stay tuned next Thursday. We'll have another author as well. So thank y'all. Bye-bye.